everybody stand for the pledge of allegiance, please.
Munhall Borough, I lean on George Playoff, Steve, quite a bit. He's the manager over there. We know the president of council. We find out that in the paper that they were selling their authority, or they're selling us 4 pipes, because they didn't have an authority through the municipality. And he said, yeah, we went through this process and everything. We're going to sell it for $19.2 million. Okay, so now let's pick this back up. So on December 16th, 2021, or 2020, in our council meeting, Council approved the budget with no tax increase. And then they asked me to, because of all the speculation of what the cost was going to be and the investment towards us, they asked me and the solicitor, Greg Basin, to move forward and to evaluate it a little bit closer to find out what we needed to do. So we went through that process. It came back and said it's almost identical, very similar to Brentwood. So you're talking the same ballpark, 19.5 million is where they said you're in the same ballpark. There's still work to be done. There would be work to be done for them, for the borough, and for the PUC to confirm that that is fair market value. The state has an Act 12 that confirms that people can't load, companies, privatizing can't lowball you. They have to pay you the fair market value. So that's the process that we would have to go to, which brings us here today. One thing I would like to, I'd like to read something on my December 16th, the same day, in my council workshop report. We were talking about the taxes, we were talking about different things, and I'll read right what I wrote to the council in my report. Decisions need to be made to combat the stagnant base of revenues. First, the increasing rate of expenditure. 1, raise revenues through tax increase. That's an easy answer, but are there other ways? Decrease expenditure. Again, easy answer, but at what cost? Sell assets. Again, at what cost? So that was part of my report that I went to, I talked about on December 16th of 2020. For council to think about. All we hear right now is we're concerned that rates are going up. Rates will go up. Rates will go up. You can't think of that just what the rates are going to be. You have to look at the whole picture. What is it going to do for the borough of Munhall? If we all want to look at the rates, let's be fair about it. The rates were, in the last 6 years, the rates weren't always higher. American Water's sewage rates were not always higher than Munhall. So we need to keep that in mind. That we can't just look at all the rates. Let's get into the taxes. Munhall Borough has not raised taxes since 2010. We stayed at 10.7 mils throughout the period. The school district, in the same time frame, increased their rates 22.5%. 6 years of increases. To help hypothetical, if we would raise our taxes over those years, or we would raise them now the same way, we would get approximately an additional, at $374,000 in tax revenues, which would be additional in the mills, where our revenue annually would be almost $850,000. So this is something that you look at, when you look at the overall wax, you look at just what rates went up, it would be up 6%. What are the rates? Where's the taxes, and how does that help the borough with taxes? If we would raise these taxes this amount, and again, there has been no discussion about raising taxes. This is a hypothetical that if we did, what we would get. The average home in Munhall is $123,000. The average assessment is around $74,000. What our houses are worth and what they're assessed at, probably 40%. For that average house of $123,000, paid by $800 in real estate taxes now. But we would increase this millage to be consistent with what the school district did, right? It would be additional $165 a year annually. So that's why you can't always look at just what the rates are. We gotta look at the whole picture. But let's take it another step. I get calls all the time about paving my road, paving my road, paving my road. Over the last 7, 8 years, we spent almost $2.6 million in infrastructure repairs, sewers and roads. Doesn't seem like it, does it? That's an average of $323,450 a year. $323,450 a year. You know, we budgeted last year, 100 for this 2021, 150,000. Because that money, we didn't have it in the budget for that amount. One year, in 2015, we spent $2,000. So it gives you an idea of the impact that it can have with the infrastructure and what we can do. So, if you look at the rates, you look at the taxes and where we're trending, we all got pay raises over the last 12 years. Everything went up over the last 12 years. It doesn't change in municipalities. So for us to take the same, more or less the same amount of money into real estate taxes it's tough to continue doing the same thing year after year. So, if we would, and it would be $19.5 million, we pay the debt off, have some cash on hand, what kind of money are we really talking that's going to benefit the borough of Munhall? The answer is between $13 and $15 million. Now, what would you do with that $13 to $15 million? That would be council's decision on where they think we need it. Residents can put some input. But if we accelerate our paving and other infrastructure projects over the next couple of years significantly, our roads can get ahead. Anytime you put money into roads and do more projects today, you're going to pay less next year. So for us only spending $150,000 this year, there's some roads we had to put on hold, probably going to cost more next year. So we accelerate the paving and infrastructure projects significantly. I talked about the last 8 years, it was 2.3 or 2.6 million. Talking about 3 million now over the next year or two. Invest in parks with war memorials. We've been discussing this since I've been here. War memorials need fixed. The parks need some improvements. This money would help to be able to put back into the community in those areas. We just had a meeting a couple weeks ago with the fire department. What are we going to do with them? What kind of improvements do we need to make? We know that if we just keep these fire departments the way they are, down the road it's still going to cost more money. Let's try to get ahead of it possibly to make sure that we can get to where we need to be. And invest and use the income, some of the income, to give back to the residents. How do we do that? We take this money, say we take 10 million, we put 10 million away, and we peel an income, a stream of revenue off every year for the next 10 years or 15 years. That'll be equivalent to like 2 mills if we can do this, if we do this. So keep in mind, you pay $6 more a month for your sewage, but you save money on the other end of the taxes. Does that make sense? And then are there any other concerns the council feels necessary that we need an influx of revenue? We would have it. We would have it. Some of these ideas were not discussed with all of council. These ideas were things that I talked to others and said, hey, this is what you can do with the money, and what other municipalities plan on doing with it. That's all I have. Thank you.
I don't know if everybody's going to be able to see the screen from back there. Can everybody see this screen? Mm-hmm. Mark? You want Mark? Okay. So I wanted to put something together as a visual so you could see what the authority actually actually, instead of just rambling off numbers, there's a visual. In the last 4 years, the authority has done significant things for the borough. Not for just the borough, but for the infrastructure, for the sewer authority, for the sewers in general. And I have marked this. That's okay. I am going to go through this of the projects that we've done. Just up and down? Okay. Okay, so the work that we've completed to date is we completed a phase 1 deficiencies and corrections. We had taken out a Penvest loan. This was $4.2 million. And those, if you don't know about Penvest, they are low interest and they go over a period of 30 years. They're available to municipalities and authorities, so they're the only people that can really get them. In 2012, the Army Corps of Engineers, they came in and did the Homestead Run project, which is down along Ravine Street. That was a $3 million project, and that was divided among a couple of municipalities, Munhall being one of them. And our portion was $440,000. That's all that Munhall Sewer Authority had to pay towards the project. We also did a phase 2 deficiencies and corrections, which was $4.6 million. That was also funded by Penvest. Those were the 3 major projects that we had completed. Now, Mark has the ins and outs of those, of what was actually done. That was sewer lining, those were manhole replacements, those were all of the work that was done up till 2015, all throughout the borough. And there was a GROW #1 grant. GROW is funded by Alphasan. GROW is a grant that is for stormwater, and it is for authorities to reduce their stormwater. We applied and received a grant for $129,000 as a reimbursement for the phase 1 deficiencies and corrections for part of that work that was completed. After that, we had completed a stormwater project on Troutman Street and also at 16th and Louise for $140,000. We also applied and received a GROW #2 grant, and it was a reimbursement grant for Griffin Field behind the high school down to Homestead Duquesne Road, and that was for $54,000. That was for a stormwater pipe that was directly connected to a sanitary sewer. Now, we also have done some emergency work. These are different types of things that were found that were not been able to be put up for bid. In 2010, there was a Pool Road repair. There was a 12-inch sanitary sewer repair that was I believe that was a dig repair, so, right? Yes. Okay. Open cut repair, so that had to be dug up and repaired. There was a Cherry Street to Ravine Street, and that was from the garden plan down to Pool Road and Ravine Street. That also had to be dug up and replaced because the clay pipe had collapsed. There was a sinkhole down on Ravine Street. That repair alone cost $80,000. The Woodhill line collapse repair, that was just this past year, was about $46,000. And just this past spring, we completed an emergency project from 22nd Avenue down to Ravine Street behind Ann Ashley Church. It was a sewer line, sanitary sewer replacement and stabilization on the upper and lower portion of the hillside. And that was $73,000. Now we also have We also do other projects, which we have to comply with the regulatory agencies. We have a new consent order coming from the DEP and Allegheny County Health Department. We also have an NPDES permit to comply with. It's a permitted CSO. We also have in our O&M plan for cleaning and televising throughout the borough as maintenance, which is part of our long-term control plan and our operation and maintenance plan. And that is beginning this year. We also have a plan to correct and replace the deficiencies that were found by Alphasan, and that is about $500,000. Those are for regionalization pipes. Those are for the very, very large pipes that are going in between the different boroughs. Inflow repairs in different areas of the borough to help wet weather overflows. There is a list of areas in the borough that have more stormwater that goes into the sanitary sewers than others. And there's a whole list of them. So those would have to be repaired as well. And there's a pretty good list of them. There's also manhole stabilization and repairs that are also needed that were noted in the Phase 2 Deficiencies project. These are down from 22nd to Levine Street. That's along that hillside, along the cliff, down. That's a very susceptible area for washouts for the manholes. Big item expenses for the authority that we have on our plate, so to speak. A road at the pump station down at the waterfront for ingress and egress in order for the factor truck to come in and out in order to clean the pump station. We have a muffin monster for the pump house. That's around $40,000. We had planned on hiring field employees so that we could do our field operations on our own for cleaning, maintenance, all of our, we were exploring that option as well. We were also exploring the possibility of having a truck, equipment, tools, and training for up to 2 employees, field employees, I'm sorry. We were also looking for GIS licensure to the Sewage Authority to track and monitor and keep records for the sanitary sewer system electronically. This could also benefit the storm system. It has the capability to monitor and track the storm system as well for any kind of upkeep and repairs that are needed and along the storm system or the sanitary system. Another way that we can help the borough financially, I know that this has come up a couple of times about how we can help the borough, how the Sanitary Sewer Authority can help the borough. We have learned through conferences and through through the Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association that municipalities similar to Munhall have created stormwater authorities. And because we already have a sanitary sewer authority, the borough could form a stormwater authority. Now, that's for the attorneys and, the council to, discuss. But that is a way that we could take something from the borough to help them financially. In a way that, it's more of a specialized, it's more specialized work, and they would be able to do the work on an everyday basis instead of as an as-needed basis. So that would be taken care of every day. And the MS4 is something that the regulatory agencies take very seriously. similar to the consent orders that are given to the municipalities and the sanitary authorities all throughout Pennsylvania. So they take it very, very seriously. And that's something that we can help them, help them with that just by taking it off the budget list. You know, you won't have to pay for that. Okay, how do I get oh, sure.
Does the borough know what expenses for stormwater management or what they budget? The line, you just have the line item.
I'm not sure. I mean, it wouldn't just be engineering costs, it would also be like lot license, you know, street sweeping, clean catch basins.
I hear you.
Okay, I wanted to take a minute to talk about our budget for 2021. We did not increase rates for 2021. And the reason why we did not increase rates for 2021 is because we did not do any projects in 2020 because of COVID. And here is an example. I know it's kind of small, and I could give copies to you guys. And everything I have here is public record, so you are able to have copies of it. You just can see me. You can come to my office, you can call me, or you can come see me after the meeting. I'll be able to give you whatever you need. Our budget is based on how much money we collect in a nutshell. We are a nonprofit agency. We are not allowed to make a profit. That is number one. We have to budget according to what we collect, what we pay Elkasan, which is budgeted, which is given to us every year. Elkasan tells us how much we need to budget every year. And that number for 2021 is 2.894301. So it's approximately $2.9 million that we have to budget to pay Elkasan. We also pay, we collect money from the ratepayers to pay for our professional services, for our engineers, for our attorneys, for wages. We also pay for commissions for our billing service. And also our projects. We plan for our projects and we budget for our projects. And this is one way we can keep our rates low. If we do not have those big projects, or we don't need to make those big projects happen, or need to have a big project in those years going forward, we can keep the rates the same. We can keep rates stable. That is one positive way of keeping things local and keeping things here. We do pay PennBest every month, and we also account for our depreciation, which is accounted for by the auditors and by our controller, who also looks over the books. And I think that is, yeah. And Elkasan does raise our rates every single year, and they have done so since let's see here, I have it up here. I have a history of Elkasan's rates. I can fully prepare, just to let you know. Elkasan has raised their rates every single year for the last, since 19, okay, so I went back all the way to 1975, 1989, 1990, And the service charge and the line fee have all gone up every single year since 1990. And that is what the borough pays them. That charge to Alphasan is not going to change, no matter whether it stays here in the borough or whether it goes to Alphasan or whether it gets sold. No matter what, they're going to have to pay that treatment charge. So that is something that also has to be considered. There was also talk about the rates for our 2021 rates, and I wanted to show the historical rates for 2021. This one. Okay, so there was also talk about the rates for the Three Rivers Wet Weather. Three Rivers Wet Weather is a public website that you can go on, and it displays what's called the Northern Basin, the Southern Basin, and the Eastern Basin of Alphasan's treatment area. This is the Southern Basin, and this is the example that I'm giving you guys today, because it is the basin that we are located in. We are kind of right in the middle. And if you see those bar graphs, we're in the middle because some of those boroughs and municipalities, some of them only flow partially to Alphasan. Some of them are very small boroughs. So it looks like we're on the higher end. But if you look at the individual need of that borough or municipality, I mean, you have boroughs and towns. I'm just going to give an example. Huh? Can I highlight Munhall right here? Right here? Okay, so Munhall here, this was 2019. $74.03 was our average. That's a quarterly bill. Now, it's without the Alphasan fee. That's additional. So we are like right here in the middle. You have Whitaker, which is in the lower end. West Mifflin, which is in the lower end. But West Mifflin has their own treatment plant. They actually have two of them. A very, very small portion of their sewage actually goes to Alphasan. West Homestead, which is West Homestead is a small borough. And if you look at these individually, Penn Hills, which only a portion of their sewage goes to Alphasan, most of it goes to Clarendon. And if you look at these smaller ones, that's exactly why they're lower. So, with that being said, I mean, I can answer questions that anybody else has. Mark, do you have anything else?
I mean, the point is that the authority has taken on a lot of projects, a lot of it being consent order driven over the past 10 years. Loans have been taken out. Penvest is a good opportunity to get low interest loans for an authority, and the authority is paying off those loans. So there is debt. It's part of the budget. So what Jackie was saying, as far as the fees, they have to pay Alphasan. They have to project to pay Alphasan 1.2, or is it 20% more than? 20%. So 1.2 times the previous year, so there has to be an escalation. And there's also debt that has to be paid from those loans taken out. Now, Penvest does give opportunities, like authorities, a chance to do really low interest loans. So there are two of those, and Jackie covered some of the grant opportunities that are available to the authority. So, you know, well covered, and we do have an operations and maintenance plan for the authority that covers the separate sanitary system, and the authority also is under an obligation to follow a long-term control plan under the DEP, and that's for the combined sewage system, which is in the older section of Munhall. So we abide by those. We have reporting requirements to follow, and that's something we do at least on an annual basis, or if there's events that occur, such as an overflow, we report those occurrences as they occur and how we follow up regarding any kind of overflow.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I guess you know, part of Munhall is under a combined sewer system. And down in the future, which Elkas said, I believe they will sometime make Munhall make up a single sewer system. I mean, not a separate system.
Separate system? Okay.
And has the authority ever took any consideration on planning something for that, or talk about it? Because those are all old lines down that part of Munhall.
Yes.
And
Yes, that has been a consideration. That was an obligation to study. I think it was back in the early 2000, I think it was a 2003 study, where we had to evaluate different options for reducing overflows down at the M49, or the Homestead-run sewer system. That combined system being part of that. And sewer separation was part of the alternatives and that analyzed at that time. Based on the cost benefit of sewer separation versus other alternatives, it didn't come up as a recommendation. It actually fared very low as far as the other alternatives. Doing projects to reduce inflow and doing repairs, and also following a different prescription within the DEP that is an approved prescription for combined sewer, is to meet an 85% capture rule. And so that is the rule that the authority is following now. And so we study that system to ensure that during wet weather events, so that would be during rain events, that 85% of the system is being captured within the system and not being overflowed into a water stream. So far that's been successful, so the studies have been favorable. So I think the likeliness of requiring a sewer separation project in that older neighborhood is very unlikely at this time. And with the new consent orders coming out as we speak, the combined systems are very highly targeting the 85% capture rule, and how different combined communities, such as the city of Pittsburgh, are following that rule and how they're meeting it with the flow monitoring requirements. Any follow-up? Oh, yeah.
And either one of you, fine, or a better person in this room, so I'm taking some notes of the presentation, thank you. So, Jack, you made a comment that there was no increase in 2021 because the project's not because of COVID. So is it fair to infer that when there are projects planned, that there will be increases to support those?
That's a good question. Thank you. As of right now, and we talk about our rates frequently, because we are always looking for projects, because we always want to make sure that we provide a good service for the people in the town. And, you know, I'm not going to speak for the board, because I don't make that decision. All I do is manage, and I give it to them. As of right now, I can say that, you know, as things progressively go the way they are, foreseeable, I don't know. I don't see a big increase. There will be nothing like 2015, if that's what you're asking, where the sewage rates doubled. It will not be anything like that. Alphasan does raise the rates 7 to 11%, around 7% every year, but that was their 5-year plan, and we try to keep up with them so we don't, you know, have those big increases. 50 cents here, 50 cents there. You know, it just kind of keeps up with them, keep up with their increases, because we don't want that huge increase like we did in 2015. But we did not do that this year at all, this past year at all.
So, are you aware of any major projects that might be coming or going to be necessary to run away?
Well, yeah, there was a regional, one project that Jackie had mentioned was regional repairs that are required by Alphasan to allow for the transfer. And we estimated that to be about $450,000 to $500,000. That earmark needs to be done, and we have, that's a scheduled activity that the authority is planning to take on. Other than that, it's more. So aside from that, the repairs, the defects that have been addressed have been done through the Phase 1 and Phase 2 projects. So we have the regional repairs that are earmarked, as mentioned, and then the rest is mostly operation and maintenance. So it's going to be additional CCTV work and finding, if there's other repairs that are needed as you go. But that wouldn't fall under like the project that you're talking about. That would be something that would be more budgeted per year.
Last question, I promise. So the list of the 5 expenses that you have on the slide, like the truck and the electronic monitoring, if you go up, are those budgeted at all, or are those like things that we'd like to pursue if we get the means to do it?
Those were big things.
Yeah.
They are budgeted.
Yeah, those were like wish list items. Yeah, we were, up until the time that up until the time when all of this hit, and COVID hit, that was something we were driving towards. I was doing a lot of research on CoStar's trucks and different equipment and the cost of hiring a couple of employees and field guys and calling different municipalities, calling different authorities and to getting all that information. So
those are included in the budget. Those aren't in the initial budget. They were actually included. They were budget items in 2020.
yeah,
So they were budgeted?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're not in addition to. Same with the projects Mark was speaking about that were approximately $500,000 in unfunded mandates through the consent order and some of the regionalization and opportunities. We have a sinking fund in order to cover those expenses. So those expenses, everything which Jack talked about today, are actually encompassed by the authority's current revenues and services. Those will not entail or necessitate regular increases.
And those unfunded mandates, they're coming from the DEP consent order. They will be required whether or not if the authority's involved, whether the municipality takes over the system, whether it's privatized. And then that will unfold over a period of 6 years where you have to do a project, depending on your classification and where you fall on DEP's range of good to bad. You'll submit projects, DEP approves, and then you implement those over a 6-year period. So if things were to move towards privatization, the private company would still be required to comply with the consent order. And then also there's profits involved whenever the private company is doing it. So all of the costs that the authority will incur over the next 6 years, when it stays under the control of the authority, it's done at a non-profit basis, basically just to cover the costs and to gain compliance as the only non-profit.
And that answers a little bit in the future, the question about the future. The consent orders have recently, they're being released, I guess, in parts. And they offer the exhibits for review, so we're actually in a due diligence period. And to give an idea of what we've received so far, separating the combined system and the separate system because they're classified differently. The combined system is looking favorable for the authority as far as the 85% capturable, so that's good news as I mentioned. For the separate system, it's really about reducing and eliminating overflows altogether. They don't want any overflows during any rain event. And if it does come to a point where you have to initiate a project to reduce to that elimination goal, it would have to be like a percent reduction as you go. So they're not saying that you have to do it tomorrow. They will allow for projects to prove that you're reducing or making your system more tight to reduce the overflows going forward. So there are potential projects in the future that will come through from the consent order.
Munhall Borough years ago was supposed to monitor the overflows
There's reporting requirements.
Yeah, it's recording requirements that we submit to the DEP, to the health department, monthly. And we have Dernach Environmental, or is our flow monitoring company that we use. We have 3 flow monitors, one at the CSO in the tunnel and 2 along Homestead Run down on Main Street.
You said that the one in the tunnel was being monitored?
Yes, it is. Yep.
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
And I have a couple of comments, and maybe you can elaborate on what you were talking about for the public to listen in on as well. So let's go back to the 85% capture philosophy. Did Homestead do that in that park there where they put those big tanks in and they caught all that rainwater there? Is that what we're talking about? Is that part
So
of the capture?
that won't qualify yet. So the DEP being it's the DEP. So their philosophy throughout these negotiations have been that everyone has to do something. So no orders have been signed yet. So anything done in the past does not yet count. At most, you could get a 5% credit. So even if you've been the most proactive community and you've done everything you can to get your stormwater out of the sewer system, they're still going to say that you have to do a 5% project. And one of the big flaws with that thinking is that the better your system is, the more expensive it gets to eliminate that last 5%. So one of the good things about Munhall system is that there is going to be some opportunities to try and get that 5% credit for some of the projects that have been done since you have an authority that's been proactive. It's the reactive authorities that are going to get hit the hardest that haven't done anything. They only fix it whenever it's completely broken.
So the next question I have is, at one time, Alphasan was going to take over main lines, and they had to be up to date, or they had to be relined, or whatever they had to be done. Has anything been done, spoken with Alphasan on taking any portions of our system over recently?
That is the regionalization project that we were talking about. Regionalization is anything 12 inches and above. Is it 12? Multi-municipal.
Trunk sewers.
And it's a certain size and above. So Homestead Run is a perfect example, which it runs down through Main Street Creek. It took me a while more. Homestead Run, by the way. Homestead Run is one of the areas. West Run is another area, and then a big portion through Homestead. There's a portion that goes through Homestead, but those are the intermunicipal lines that Elkasan is interested in taking over because they are trunk sewers, and it's not just in the borough of Munhall that they're doing this. They're doing it through all 83 municipalities throughout Allegheny County. So they're taking over 270 miles of trunk sewers throughout the county. It's not just Munhall.
And that's part of the same way that Allegheny County municipalities are under the DEP consent order. Alphasan is under a mandates from the EPA, from the federal being handed down. So this is one of their good faith efforts, as it says in their consent order, to try and do the same thing that we're all being required to do and eliminate stormwater. So when they have these multi-municipal trunk sewers, obviously, so you might have a trunk sewer that runs through Munhall, but it's serving 2 or 3 upstream municipalities. So that often leads to the trunk sewer maybe not being maintained because no one can agree on how to pay for it. So this way it just becomes a part of Alphasan's facilities, and they will pay for it. Paying for it, maintaining it will be built into their rates.
So where are we with that? Where is that at?
That is part of the $500,000 project that we have on our plate to do.
So a big part of
Yes.
it right now, they want Alphasan, before Alphasan would just take the line, they want to make sure that it's not, that it's up to a certain degree of compliance to accept it. Part of it is doing title searches to make sure that all of the legal issues are in order. So that's where we're at right now, is doing the due diligence before they'll actually take it over. So it's,
Was that in our budget? Was that budgeted? So that's already been budgeted?
Yes, and it goes, what Alphasan did was, they went out and did CCTV work and cameraed all of those lines. And there's a NASCO, like,
Certified inspectors.
Yes, and only levels 4 and 5 are the ones that are being repaired. Not 1s and 2s and 3s, only 4s and 5s. So those are the ones that, so we have a couple open cut repairs, we have a couple full length lines, we have a list of them, but we have a couple on West Run, but most of them are on West Run. Or
So-
not, most of them are on Homestead Run, I'm sorry.
So what is your time frame that you can say, okay, we're ready for Alphasan to take these over? 5 years?
well, the issue is Alphasan. So we get everything ready, we deliver the package to their door, but they need to open the package.
Right.
So, since they have the 83 municipalities, so my office in particular was on the negotiating team for the Alphasan takeover and the DEP consent orders. So we're a little better suited with some inside knowledge to try and get ahead of the game, and we're hoping that Munhall is going to be one of the first ones out of the 83.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I want the public to be aware of that too, because that's a pretty important subject to talk about.
Regarding those repairs, we're actually on our way to the repairs that we've mentioned going forward are a majority, but probably 20% of the repairs have been completed. So when they submitted the information regarding the repairs needed, we were able to submit through our proactive work with the authority that, oh yeah, we repaired this one, here's the CCTV video of the post-construction. So we were able to submit those already. And we correspond with Alphasan pretty much either quarterly or biannually on updates regarding repairs. And so we do have these remaining.
Jackie, I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
How is Munhall actually going to benefit by not selling the sewer authority?
Speak into the microphone.
I want you to speak into the microphone.
My question was, how is Munhall actually going to benefit by not selling the sewer authority? And how is Munhall going to benefit, I'll ask another guy that, if we do sell the sewer authority?
That's a really tough question for me to answer because
I mean, I think it's a...
yeah, I want to let Matt answer that. That's not for me to answer. I'm very passionate about my job, and I really like to see the best come out of it. And I'll let Matt answer.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Did I heard this microphone?
No, I don't think it's going
I think it's wireless. Well, I'm not sure. Maybe you can hear me. First, I'd like to thank the ratepayers who attended this. As you can see, business in the sewer authority can be quite boring at times. I remember a time back in maybe earlier mid-2000s when it was 3 or 4 hours of the council meetings were spent dealing with sewer authority matters, and that's part of the reason that the borough had a hard time keeping up with the maintenance and ongoing business of the authority that spun of the sewer system that spun off the creative authority. So I appreciate everyone who has an interest in defending it. Jackie's kind of gone over, thank you, Jackie, for going over some of the things that we've done. Thank you. Jackie's gone over some of the things that we've done since the inception of the sewer authority, but really, those are the basic things that need to be done. That's the thing that anyone would have to do in order to continue to operate an efficient authority, and I do believe that we've made great strides in increasing the professionalism of the authority. We maintained office hours through the pandemic. We have full-time staff, and we have professional record keeping, we have professional consultants, and we endeavor to keep the cost of the authority as low as possible. I mean, and to answer Rich's question, I appreciate that question, believe me, I've thought about it too. We are running an extremely lean authority, and the fact is, as Nate mentioned, no matter who runs this authority, the costs are basically equal. The costs to run this are going to be very similar. There's no way to distribute it any better. There's 4,400 ratepayers. We have an enormous fixed cost that we owe to Alphasan every year, and the rest of this is this amount that we have one full-time employee, one half-time employee. I mean, so the only way to run this any more efficiently is to cut services. I mean, if you're going to run it at the level that we run it, and you're going to do it as a business that's beholden to their shareholders, and there's got to be a profit liability. So when we talk about raising rates, rates will raise over time. Of course they will, our expenses raise. But there's no way to do it any leaner than we are already doing it and at a profit. It's just that simple. There's no way to do that. So I believe that's the biggest benefit. When we talk about rates, that's the biggest benefit. Beyond that, you know, we are here in Munhall. We are governed by a board of 5 volunteer members. We don't get anything out. We don't have a salary. We don't have a stipend. We don't have an expense account. We're just volunteers. And we are interested as citizens of the borough to run it as best we can. We run it as professionally as we can. That's why we have professional consultants. And we offer an increased level of service because you can call me on the phone. You can call Jackie on the phone anytime. And people do. And we respond to it. You can't do that to people. I don't know if you've ever tried to call. Well, I won't use companies by name, but you know, we have utility companies. Try to call your utility company and report an emergency. Try to call your utility company and get a little clarification on the bill. Try to call your utility company and get minutes from the last meeting. It's not going to happen. So those are the value adds that we have. And
Well, right now, Munhall Borough doesn't receive a dime from the sewer authority.
Right.
As far as
Well, let me put this out there. Jackie did offer some ways that the borough can activate as or the authority can act in reciprocation to the borough. Right now, we have a multi-municipal agreement with West Midland. We use them for some of the maintenance when we can, because they can offer a better rate and they have some of the manpower equipment that we can use. We can bring some of that in-house. We can assist the borough in some other in-kind contributions. And the other thing would be, and maybe now I'll turn around and speak to the council, because I just like to speak as a regular citizen, or let's say a well-informed bystander to the authority. If the borough truly had the discipline to take that money, whatever the sum is, and put it in a restricted fund and just use it for paving roads, let's say, I'd probably be all for it. But there's no way that that's the case. It's never been the case. If that was the case, we wouldn't be in the position we're at right now. If that was the case, we'd be talking about selling fire trucks or police cars or whatever. We have an asset that we've had for a very long time, and the only reason that anyone would be talking about selling an asset that's as performing as well as the authority is because people are desperate. And we don't want to take a long-term asset and sell it to plug a short-term goal, or short-term hole rather. If we have long-term goals, so anyway, we're not beholden to shareholders. We are ratepayers. We're beholden to the ratepayers, and that's what we're here for. And that's the value that we bring. That's what keeping in the borough is why we think it's in the best interest of the ratepayers. We're not customers. We have ratepayers. Other companies are going to tell you that. And I also like to ask the council if we are going to move forward with any kind of more serious deliberation about selling this asset that we have, I'd like to propose that we have an actual public hearing, you know, with stenographers and everything else, where we can take people's real opinions and take those into account and have documentation of that, if that's possible.
So I did have a couple more questions that I didn't get to ask. I saw on your, could you go back to the screen that you had all the municipalities on up there? Yes. Here we go. So, a couple things I found very interesting was that Brentwood Boroughs was $120. Is that $120 per quarter? And ours was 74. So, and that was back in 2019. This is 2019 numbers.
Yeah, those are 2019.
So they really had a problem there, I guess, with their rates. Maybe that's why they switched, sold. I don't know.
I don't know, I can't see, I'm just looking at the rates as a whole.
Brentwood was sold for 16 point some million dollars. Is that right, Joe? Brentwood sold their sewer authority for $16 million, 19.2 million. I just thought, wow, their rates were way higher. And Mount Oliver, the small little borough of Mount Oliver, was even higher than ours as well. I don't see it there yet. Yeah, $85.
Mount Oliver is right here.
So I just thought that was, just those two numbers were pretty surprising. And then when you were going through things here, you said how you got grants from, or rebate grants, or reimbursement grants, I think it was the term. Any of these projects you have in the future, planning on trying to get any grant money for this? Or is there grant money funding for some of these projects?
That's a very
Maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yes, yes, I'll be more than happy to elaborate.
And we do have companies that will file grants for the borough, so I'm sure we could file for a municipal sewer authority as well.
We apply for GROW every year. We submit a letter of interest every year to Alphasan for a project that will reduce stormwater infiltration and inflow every single year. And it's up to them whether they accept it or not. If they accept it, then we go forward, and then it's a process. We also apply for the PA Small Water and Sewer Grant every year. We apply for the CITF every year. And I believe we've also done some with the GEDTF.
And
That's the gaming one.
And these are all things that a private entity would not qualify for.
And that's what I was trying to make a point.
Yes.
And then when you move into the rates that you're paying for some of this stuff, they're not entitled to the lower percentages either, are they?
No.
No, those are, because the PennVest is specifically for municipal entities.
That's what I thought. So when we would sell this to a private entity, they're not a municipality, so they're a for-profit company, or are they a non-profit? Are these non-profits that are taking over? Are utilities non-profit? Or are they for-profit?
No, yeah, they're for.
So there's a big difference between a sewer authority and a private entity running a business, or running a service, I should say, not a business. Am I correct?
That is correct.
I thank you for the work you guys are doing. I think you guys, people don't realize the amount of work that goes into just running a small service like a small 4,000 unit municipality. So there's a lot of work, and I thank you for your efforts.
Quick question, Jack.
Sure.
All the current ones on there, municipal authorities, they're not with other groups. I mean, Brentwood was in 19 Durham Municipal Authority, right?
Collier Township, I believe that their township absorbed their sewer authority. Is that right?
Yeah,
Just recently. And yeah, those are all 2019 rates. So yes, those are all 2019. You can go on to Three Rivers Wet Weather onto their website, and you're able, as a citizen, you're able to go on and look at the
clarification, which has been very enlightening for me, so I appreciate having this meeting. But I, at the same time, want to make sure that we're putting all information on the table. So while we are making a comment that utilities are for-profit and the sewer authority is not, at the same time, as a utility, they are regulated by the PUC, so they have to watch how much they raise rates, as opposed to, and I know we won't do this because we're working this now, but you could conceivably have a 100% increase one year because you're not regulated. So apples to apples, I think that's fair to put out there.
Well, that's, if I can, that's not necessarily true.
Okay.
We are
Because they
regulated.
have, yeah, so rates have to be supported by a rate study. So
Okay.
basically, they look at your capital expenditures and look at the budget, and it has to be a function of that number. So so the way the Municipal Authorities Act is written in the Sewer Rental Act, there is a cap. There's even a cap on how big the rainy day fund can be. So, and you shouldn't call it rainy day fund, but
Capital
it's,
reserve.
it's basically capital reserve. It's basically capped at 10% of your, I guess I'm not sure what the 10% number, the overall number is called. I guess operating budget, likely. So it's 10% of, anyway, there's a 10% cap on what the reserve fund could even be. So it is still checked. And the PUC, even though the PUC does review rate increases by utilities, the standard for the increase is pretty flexible. It's basically they just have to justify it. There's not some hard and fast rule on what they can do, and they can get relief where, and it needs to be that way for them because in some situations they're taking over systems that are absolutely distraught. And where in like past years the rates jumped a lot, that usually happens, and we refer to it as rate shock, because an authority maybe avoids doing incremental increases because they want to be able to say they didn't increase rates last year. Well, you eventually have to. Alphasan releases their rates 5 years at a time, and every single year there's an increase. So a lot of municipalities are catching on to that now and following suit, and at the very least, keeping up with Alphasan to break even so that they're not being billed by Alphasan more than they're bringing in.
Thank you for the clarification. The other point I want to make is just something I shared from reading. So in reading about other towns, not even just in Pennsylvania, but in other states, one thing I've seen is, I don't want to call it selling point, but I guess an advantage of doing something like this is that, and you sort of touched on this, that if there's work to be done, Munhall doesn't have its own staff. We outsource much definitely if we can. If we can't, then we go to another company. But outsourcing, and unless you're corporate American, you're outsourcing overseas for some really cheap labor, it's not the cheapest. Now, it might be cheaper having an in-house staff that maybe isn't busy all day, every day. But it does come at a little bit of a premium than having your own staff on hand. With the business model of the utility taking over, they have multiple towns that are all their wages are going into one bucket. There's economies of scale. They have large staffs that are available that will work at a prorated amount that you might pay for outsourcing unless there's some really extensive job that a specialized company has to run in, which that's a limited case because those companies have a pretty large staff on hand, and it's basically a function like a savings and loan. It's a Wonderful Life. Your money is going to pay for Johnny's mortgage, and Sally's money is going to pay for Billy's college loan. You're taking all that money and pulling it in one spot to diffuse the cost across the board. Now the argument can be made that, all right, well that means we're paying for the Peace Corps' broad infrastructure, which, sure, but God forbid, Munhall has an emergent need that there's a $3 million project that wasn't budgeted for in that business case. We might be better suited because it's on Alphasan where it is. They're on the hook for that. Now, they might trickle that down to some rate increase in the future, but my point I'm trying to make is that they would have better infrastructure to hopefully keep operating costs down. From what I read, from what I understand, as opposed to, God forbid, like I said, we had a catastrophic event, we don't have the staff, and now we're outsourcing that. So that was just something I was just moving one part that I read that struck me. That's something I had.
But I think with larger projects, they're in the same situation that they'll also bid it out. So they might handle some of the day-to-day and GIS and the same types of things that we do, but when it does come to a big overhaul, I don't think they have like a construction team that moves around the state, they'll also bid it out to large construction outfits.
I can just touch on this too. One of the biggest things, Jim Nowak is at Whitehall's going through the same process.
We can't hear you.
I thought he'd talk about it. If Baldwin is going through the same process, Whitehall is going through the same process, or others. And Jim Nowak is the mayor of Whitehall. He's the president of the Mayor's Association. I talked to him about where they are, what his thoughts are. One question he asked me was, why wouldn't you want to treat sewage like every other utility? And that, I keep coming back to that. And the second thing is, I think I mentioned when I first started talking, let's not get too caught up on rates, because regardless, rates are going to go up. We would all agree with that. And as I showed, the rates for in-house were higher 3 years out of 7 versus 4 years out of 7. So we're not going to guarantee that our rates are going to be always lower than if they were privatized, which gets back to the influx of funding. And Matt Bovee, you're exactly right. We can guarantee that the money would be used to give back to the community, to repair the roads. We can guarantee that. It does make a lot more sense. And that was brought to my attention, and that is a concern. Thank you.
Just one comment on that question. I mean, it's an excellent question. Talk about efficiencies of operations, economies of scale, having more widespread sewers to be able to operate. You can spread your staff out. I think one of the benefits that was mentioned about our opportunities would be to integrate stormwater in with the sanitary sewer as far as a function of operations. In many places, they're right next to each other. We're doing the same type of work, CCTV or camera work, lining repairs, point repairs. And I'll mention one thing that also we're looking forward to doing with the authority is the GIS mapping that the authority has right now. It's come a long way, and it's really been consent order driven, is to properly map and account for assets. And it's very mature. We're able to update information, and any resident who makes a phone call, we can look on the system in real time and see what work has been done and where our assets are. And we're looking to continue that. And I see a big opportunity on the stormwater side, which I think there's a big gap that needs caught up on. And there's a permit that the borough has with the MS4 to do that, and that is something that I think when you talk about operational efficiencies, I think that's something that the authority would be able to operate more efficiently, having dedicated staff to help with both utilities, and I think that would be an opportunity, because over the past many years it's been very reactive, and now it's more proactive, and we have a much more mature understanding of the system and how it functions. Areas that need to be addressed on an annual basis or semi-annual basis, just because we know these areas tend to clog, these areas tend to collect debris. And it's coming in as a utility, a new utility, but I don't know if there's going to be that institutional knowledge or mapping or just full functional understanding of the system like the authority has right now.
Can I say something on that? So just one, a lot of municipalities are forming stormwater authorities. Joe and I actually educated ourselves on that a couple of years ago. I think it's a great idea. It's something the borough should pursue. Places like Monroeville, Bethel have done it. They charge residents a flat fee, like maybe $7 annually. That money goes towards maintaining and improving the stormwater system. Commercial customers get charged based on impervious area. However, I do want to say that in order to form that authority, you would have to do a rate study, which for Munhall Borough would be a massive effort. And that's going to include large-scale assessment of the infrastructure that's there, which, you know, to be honest, our records can be spotty sometimes at best. So camera work, assessment, valuations. So when we talk about forming that authority, there's a large initial upfront cost with that. I really think it's something that the Borough Council should explore and consider, but understand that there would be a large cost associated, an upfront cost associated with forming that authority, you know, both from a legal and, you know, an engineering consulting side. Go ahead.
The good thing from the legal side is that for you to add stormwater to the responsibilities of the existing sewer authority, all council has to do is amend the bylaws, because an authority is limited to whatever its bylaws says it can do for its created purpose. So if you make it a sewer and storm authority, then it won't cost the borough a dime. The authority then, under the Municipal Authorities Act, right now, as it is, the boroughs cannot implement a separate fee for stormwater. Municipal authorities can. So the municipal authority could then levy that fee. The borough would no longer have to spend any money on stormwater issues, any money, the street sweeping, all those different things would be freed up. And then the authority could undertake all those expenditures for the cost studies and everything that's needed. Because that stormwater fee is also calculated in a similar way as sewer rates. It's not an arbitrary number. It depends on the full calculation of what we require.
My point, and you know, I don't disagree with anything you said. The initial upfront cost of starting the, you know, of doing the initial, I shouldn't say starting the authority, of doing the initial rate study would have to come from somewhere. You know, in the situation you described, it would come from the authority, which would ultimately have to be in the budget. So, one other thing, could you go back to the budget page? It was
I have a,
the projects, the 6 projects,
yeah.
upcoming projects. And this is just to answer Jason, there was a lot of different points going around. I think I understand, but I just want to, yeah.
Is it the O&M plan?
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, I know you said that the $500,000 for the Alphasan regionalization projects are budgeted. And then the O&M stuff for new trucks is budgeted. Is there any line items in the budget for new consent order regulations? We're still trying to,
That'll be a 6 years, so there will be time to build that into the budget. Because your project will have to be approved, and then of course, and also depending on, there's going to be kind of the beginning stage is basically review and analysis of your flow monitoring data, and then you come up with a plan to address that analysis and then implement it.
And then one other question on this, the 500,000, so that includes the repairs that were highlighted in Alphasan's regionalization.
Yes.
report. Is Alphasan still offering cost share?
No.
It's not cost share.
No, it's not a cost share. They were offering, what their plan was they were going to pay for it up front, and then if the municipality or authority didn't have the money to pay for it up front, they were going to pay it and then bill it back to them at their bond rate, and then you would have 12 months to pay it back, or 36 months or something like that. But it was very, very short loan amount, very, very short term, and it was easier to work it into a budget, or get a traditional loan, or work it into a pet invest or something like that. That's the route that we were, looking to go.
Jackie, I have a question. The projects here, can
Yeah.
you give like a time frame? I mean, is A the one that you're working on currently, the B, and C?
Yeah.
Is there a time frame?
You're really all over the place. Let me
Okay, I just wanted to clarification.
Yeah, consent order, regulatory obligations. Really, the main part of that is still coming out, because we've just We've gotten exhibits for what's coming with the new consent order, and the projects that Nate was talking about that's kind of like in the future. Now, as far as reporting requirements, that's ongoing. So we are reporting on consent order requirements such as overflow activity. So the monitoring being done down by Homestead Run, if we have an overflow event, we have to report that. So there's a little bit of ongoing activity with that regarding reporting, but then the actual projects will be forthcoming. That's more of a future item. The NPDES permit is another reporting item, so that's not so much directed towards the project. The phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's an annual plan, and we're looking at doing the phase 1 this year and phase 2 next year, phase 3. So and those are portioned out throughout the borough in 5 phases. The deficiency corrections, we're looking at starting that at the end of this year and into next year, early next year. So that's like an upcoming activity. Inflow repairs, we're looking at doing that over the next 2 years. It's in our O&M plan for our list. And those are areas that we try to get help with from neighboring municipalities like West Mifflin Authority when they have availability to look at some suspect areas where we feel that there's high I&I or inflow and infiltration, and they'll provide us the camera work, and then we can develop a project from there. So we have basically like an activity list regarding that. And the manhole stabilization and repair was done just recently, right? Was that the 22nd Avenue? Oh yes, and that's like coming up here. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
With the consent order, it is very important to note that the consent, so it's called a consent order because there's current litigation going on for municipalities being in violation of environmental laws. So the consent order is basically an agreement that the DEP will not fine the municipalities so long as they do X, Y, and Z. So DEP will sign this consent order, and each individual municipality will sign it. There's a specific provision in the consent order that says, basically, sale of your system does not affect this consent order. So even if the system were privatized, the municipality remains on the hook for all compliance measures in that consent order. Now, the municipality could make a separate agreement with the utility company buying it that they would do the work, but it doesn't affect DEP. If they fall behind, DEP will still be citing the municipality and enforcing the violation of the consent order against the municipality. DEP would have to approve or do some external agreement, and that's unprecedented.
Just from the outset of the meeting, I'm Dan Lloyd. I was here on council and right around the time in 2007 when the Sewer Authority had to be formed, and it had been formed by Munhall, but it never went into effect. In effect, it was a paper board. And just to answer one of the questions that Councilman Bonadilla had asked about what's Munhall get from it. Well, what Munhall got from it was we got relief from a $200,000 fine from DEP that they were imposing on the borough because the Sewer Authority hadn't actually met and started to comply with the consent order as every other municipality had. So what Munhall got was they no longer had to manage that. They no longer had to comply with the consent order, which was put onto a newly formed board. So that solved the problem for the borough. But I haven't heard a good reason why it should be sold at this point unless Munhall needs cash that badly, because this citizen board has done a fantastic job of meeting the obligation with the help of good legal counsel and good engineering. So I don't see why there's a rush to sell it. If it's worth $16 million or $19 million to Pennsylvania American Water Company, it'll be worth that next year, and maybe more in 5 years from now. Maybe it'll be worth $25 million. So unless there's some drastic need that Munhall has, I think we're in better hands locally. And one of the best points that was made tonight was from the lawyers from Nicholas and Sanitary that Munhall's still on the hook if Pennsylvania American or some other private buyer doesn't meet the consent order. It's still Munhall that's going to be on the hook. And I've spoken to other council people from municipalities that have sold their authority, and they had a big concern, much like the one that Rich voted and raised about, well, what if we need to replace all these old lines? Well, whether we replace it with our board doing it and paying to outsource it, or Pennsylvania American or whoever might buy the authority, they're not coming in as a gift to Munhall residents. Every dime that's spent on fixing Munhall sewer lines is going to be passed on to the ratepayers of Munhall Borough. And to think that they can do it cheaper, or that they have economies of scale that are going to make it cost less for them to do it, they're taking a profit. Our authority isn't taking a profit. So I say I don't even understand why we're even thinking about selling the authority, other than there's a big ball of cash there that people would like to have to use to do things we should already be doing. So thank you for your time.
And if I could just answer that question, that is the intent of the meeting. The meeting wasn't to come and say anybody's selling it. The meeting came to have exactly what we're doing now. Hear opinions, hear what's going on.
I got a question, I don't need a mic. These people here seem like they're doing a hustle job taking care of our sewer system. They're maintaining it, and it's cheap for the people of the borough, and it's not costing the borough no money. No, we're not taking money off it, but these people are passionate about it. You want to sell it to a corporation, so you come here and raise all our water bills, our sewage bills, and everything else. You can have all you want, like I don't care. But these people care about the borough. She was all upset about it because she won't lose her job because she's passionate about it. If it's not costing us money, why are we even thinking about getting rid of it? So we can have 16 million sitting in the borough, so we can spend on stuff that doesn't need to be spent on?
Dave, I'll repeat myself. That's what this meeting's all about. So we don't need your aggressiveness in the meeting.
There's no aggressiveness. These people are doing a great job.
Thank you.
For the city, for our borough.
Thank you.
And then, like the man said, if something goes wrong, you're trying to call them, do anything like trying to get anything done, no, it don't happen. You'll be on the phone for hours. You can call these people right here in the borough.
Dave, do you know that we work with them every single day? Do you know we had all these conversations? 2.5-hour conversation with Joe Ballas the other day, 2-hour conversation with Becky. We all get along and we talk about the same common goal.
I'm sorry, I'm a passionate person, and I'm a very loud person. I got a loud voice.
We're not here.
I'm not here arguing, I'm just saying.
We're not here that we're want to sell an authority. We're here to get questions answered.
You've been wanting to sell the authority for that stuff for years.
Nobody said that we're going to sell an authority.
Yeah, you're going to sell the authority. Just like we want to sell everything else. Just like we have our own damn water company, but the borough is so that too. I don't know, these people they do a good job, I think, for a corporate.
Hey, I do have a question. I think the microphone I am curious why this is coming up now. That's a valid question. So without the aggression, I'm wondering why we're discussing it now. now? Has something come up that is making us consider selling it, or like?
Getting back to my original presentation, in 2009, we sat with a person, it's the engineer from, the vice president of engineering from Pennsylvania American Water, or actually American Water Corporate. During small talk, it came up. I asked the question because I was looking for something to talk to the gentleman about. And I said, I heard about it, and I don't hear anything more. When we came back, I talked to the council, I talked to the board members, and the biggest question was, they'll never pay $16 million. Okay, so December, the council asked the solicitor and myself to look into it to see where we are, see if that is possible. So it's our job to look into this and present it to the community. If the community doesn't want to do this, it's okay. Well, most of us are going to be able to pay the rates as they go up, as the taxes go up. We'll be able to pay that. We'll live happily ever after. And after today, next year at this time, depending where rates are, who cares where rates are, who cares where taxes are, we're not even going to remember we had this meeting. So it came up now. The only reason it came up is no one thought it was worth it. So we're reporting what they asked us to do. Simple as that.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. I just had a quick follow-up question. It just wasn't clear to me, during your presentation, kind of talking about some of the pros and cons, it wasn't clear to me where the incentive would come in to raise rates to potentially pay for infrastructure. I wasn't clear on that. Because we had talked about that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, what that was is, if we would get $19.5 million and we would pay the debt off and everything cash on hand, we would come between a $13 and $15 million revenue jump. And to Matt's point, if we put $3 million here, $2 million in infrastructure, $2 million in parks, $10 million away, we wouldn't have to raise taxes like $2.25 million for 10 to 15 years. So that's the idea is, okay, if we're going to move on, we're going to get something out of it. How can we give back to the community? And for the most part, these are just ideas that I came up with to say we can look into. I haven't sat down, I don't think Greg has sat down, or Colin has sat down. None of us sat down with a professional to say, okay, we have $15 million, this is what we want to do with it, and this is how we want to give back. They never came to us and said, this is what you can do, and this is why you do it. If there's no reason to have those discussions, if we leave today and we do nothing, Pennsylvania American Water is going to check Munhall off the list. Aqua America is going to check Munhall off the list, and they're going to move into the other communities. The way they work, your community's here, you get to the board next, and if you're in the next one in the queue. Now, Butler comes in here, which they did, and their system's worth $250 million. They're going to jump to the line. The other municipalities will keep on going, and you'll get into your queue. They don't just take all these and just start negotiating and selling 20 million, 57 million, 157 million at one time. So,
Is there a deadline of some sort, or?
if we don't want to do this, we just tell them we're not doing it.
Thank you.
And that's what that was.
We start, whether to have some discussions on where, whatever. And all of a sudden, we're selling some sewer. No, that's not the
It's a discussion.
a lot of rumors out there that are not true.
Thank you.
I'd just like to know what Munhall Sewer Authority, their capabilities are, besides calling somebody else. What is Munhall Sewer Authority? are your capabilities besides calling somebody else?
As far as maintenance goes,
Maintenance or anything, yes, what are your capabilities?
I manage and operate, I mean, I don't go out and look manholes every day, but I do go out and, you know, inspect things on, rarely.
Financial,
Rarely inspect things? Is that what you're saying? You
No,
rarely inspect
not me personally, not me personally, but we do send people out, yes.
What is your function?
I'm the manager, I oversee the operations of the sewer authority day to day.
And who does that involve?
That involves working with the engineers, the solicitors, keeping in touch with the board members, also customers and ratepayers, the billing service, and any kind of maintenance and upkeep that has to be done to the system, all of that.
So you depend on other people to do that, or?
Right now, yes.
So what is your function then, besides having other people do it?
Yes, please.
So the manager of the authority is basically, it's mostly an administrative role. However, she has to prioritize, the manager has to prioritize proactive work with reactive work. They have to also manage all of the incoming bills that go through, they have to administer that. As far as collecting phone calls and any kind of customer complaints, manage the budget, manage all the bills that come in, and provide recommendations to the authority board. So the authority board meets on a monthly basis. They're volunteers, as we mentioned earlier, so they don't work on the everyday operations of the authority, so they really rely on the recommendations provided by the manager. Like some recommendations just can't come from an engineer or a solicitor. It has to come from an employee of the authority. Do you have any other, does that answer your question? It is a full-time responsibility. I speak with her quite often, so does the solicitor.
I might have another thing to add. The sewer authority today is very busy, and I'm speaking as a plumber now. We do so many dye tests in the borough, and I'm just a small company. They're dealing with the sales of real estate homes, failures, inspections on failures. There's oftentimes I'm calling the sewer authority, I can't find a manhole, you know, they give me direction. So there's a lot of hand-in-hand work that goes on with the municipality. On my end as a plumber working with the sewer authority for sales of homes, not just Munhall, Homestead, all the municipalities are doing that. And it's so much, it's easier working with someone in town than, I don't know how a bigger company would do that, or what types of inspections they would want. Just to add, if you go into some municipalities, they want camera certifications, they want a lot more elaborate certifications done to sell a home. If you go into O'Hara, Swickley, they want complete camera inspections, and if there's any infiltration at all, it's a total line replacement. So that's not happened here yet in Munhall. Not too many. Whitaker has camera inspections now. So if you want to elaborate more on that, you certainly can. But that's a big thing in my business right now.
Yeah, basically following the resolutions that established the regulatory obligations and ordinances. So it could be a dye testing requirement that is prevalent through every home sale or transfer of ownership, and so that's run through the authority. And there are quite a bit with 4,000 customers. There's quite a bit of things operationally that require attention, and to have somebody who is a point source for that information, including permits and the regulatory communications, they don't go directly to consultants. They go to the head of the authority. So all that has to be administered by a representative of the authority.
And this going hand in hand with something like dye tests. So one of the absolute best ways to cut stormwater out of the system is by fixing private laterals, private connections. And DEP would love it if all municipalities would enact ordinances requiring you to fix your private lateral at the time of sale. The issue that poses, and when the sheet that was passed out, it shows the average home in Munhall is worth $123,000. So if your house is selling for $123,000, and if the borough were requiring a private sewer lateral replacement, that could break the deal. The house might not sell. You could end up in a situation where you end up with vacant homes because a $50,000 property, no one wants to pay $5 or $6 or $7 grand to replace a sewer lateral. So within a municipal authority, your board members are vested in the community, and they understand the community, and they understand the home values, and they understand the hurdles that something like that would cause. With a private entity, that private entity is trying to get into compliance the best that they can. So it might be to their benefit to pass the buck to the individual and appease the DEP by putting that requirement on homeowners instead of using their own capital expenditures to eliminate the stormwater as a means of compliance, which is what the authority does. So the human factor is really probably one of the biggest benefits, similar to using a hometown bank as opposed to some big chain where the banker might give you a loan that you might not otherwise be able to get because he knows you and knows your history and whatever else. And a good example of that came through COVID and the number of unpaid bills and the fact that the authority board allowed for flexible payment plans to allow people to slowly dig their way out of a hole. There was even an issue of a prominent cemetery that incurred debt because of a leaking toilet. And the authority has the ability to forgive that debt, whereas a private for-profit corporation is probably going to hold you to it. And then what? You have a cemetery with a lien on it, and it's issues like that where having a board that's vested in the community really kind of shines and benefits the borough in ways beyond just dollars and cents.
I live on 22nd Avenue, Munhall. We've had problems every storm. Sewer didn't level out. We get garbage all through the yard, the street. I've called Munhall, I don't know how many times, texted them. The only answer I got was from the Sewage Authority. They came immediately, checked it out. There was a sewage, what's the cap? It's a storm sewer, but it didn't have, it had a sewage cap. That's why I contacted. She came down immediately, checked it out, informed me that it wasn't a sewage, it was storm sewer. Well, I have yet to hear from Munhall Borough about this storm sewer getting plugged in. This has been going on for years now. As soon as that got the sewage, they came down. I am all for keeping them, like it's been said. It's personal. She came down on her own time, I think it was 5:30, probably after her regular work hours, to talk about it. Neighbor down the street didn't know I had already contacted her, posted it on the internet. It coming off, water flowing everywhere. She came down and answered again to him that it wasn't sewage. That's the service we want. That's not the service we will get if we sell it to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
If anyone else has a question, please come up and get in line here. We can expedite this a little quickly.
So, in case you don't know, Kathleen Garris, live on Elizabeth Street in Munhall. was mentioned earlier about, and I'm also a school board member of Still Valley. It was mentioned earlier about how Still Valley School District has raised taxes. So last year alone, the school district paid $9 million to charter schools. We have no control over that other than trying to get the students back. So right off the bat, every year, $9 million, and it keeps going up. I just wanted to make that clear. It wasn't because we raised taxes because we didn't do or did do something. It was because $9 million is what we have to pay. And it's going up. I think it's going to be close to 11 next year. So, and we are trying to get the students back. I know the assessments for home purchases has been looked at. My son purchased a home. His assessment went up. So is there, and I can't remember when this started, but do we know how much money we are increasing by doing this so far?
I'm sorry, Kath, what was the question?
The reassessment.
The process that we go through, and we just started it 2 years ago, is a house is sold, we get a tax transfer report from the county. We see what the houses are sold for, and we see what they're assessed at. We look at a 75%.
Right,
This is
I know.
between the school district and the borough. We look at 75% of what the house was sold for, it should be assessed at that. If it's not in that range, we put it on the list and we will appeal those assessments, but you can't do it till the following,
Right.
year. So,
I mean, do we know how much more you're getting from those properties?
not off the top of my head, do you know how much the school gets? 'Cause we would be similar.
Yeah, I'm not off the top of my head either.
But it would be, proportionate what percentage
Right.
school
Because
districts
it's
get,
together.
even get the same
Right.
percentage.
Right.
But we do get about 40% of where our taxes should be. Right now, I just did it from the year. Anybody remember I sent the report out all the time? I think it's like 50% of what the houses were sold for is what they're assessed at. And it came out to be like $4 million or $7 million difference, which was $100,000 of assessments. That was just for the beginning of the year. I'm
Right.
throwing
No,
that out.
I'm not sticking to, making you stick to numbers. I just want
And
to
that is
say
one of-
it's something
that
that we as a district, you as the
Right.
borough are doing to get more money into.
And that is a main issue.
Right.
And we're trying to work through that, and that's the key. We talk about the school districts and what they got to pay and how everything's going up. That's exactly where we are now with every single thing that we do, insurances, wages, vehicles. And right now, vehicles are difficult to get, so if we need one, it's going to be more expensive. So everything continues going up. And that's why it's so important to look at where the budget is now. We were very, very thin last year with the budget. The council made a decision because of the pandemic to try to cut costs rather than to increase taxes.
So, speaking of last year in COVID, I know the school districts applied for the grants that were available. I'm not sure how much our district actually ended up getting, but it was a significant sum of money. Did the borough apply for any of the rescue plans?
American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, we did. We received $575,000. We're still waiting. I had a conversation with our solicitor, Greg, and I talked to Still Rivers Cog to see what we can use that money for. It's very vague right now. So.
Okay. Yeah, I know it has to be geared toward a certain expenditure. Is there any more you can apply for? Because I know we applied for several.
We got a million over there. Yeah, we got another one last year. And we got $1 million on this one. Some municipalities are $10,000. I mean, it's all.
Yeah, oh, no, I know, I understand. So if the decision does end up being selling the authority at Munhall rates, is that a a good statement, or I know you can't foresee the future, but
All right, what was the question?
if we do not, or if we do end up selling the authority, you're most likely not raising taxes since we would have this abundance of money?
If we do something, we're gonna put it away for a year. That was just an idea of one thing that we could do.
Right.
That would help with about 2 mills per year. Now, you never wanna say freeze taxes because you don't know in 8 years time how the road's gonna be. But yes, that would help the bottom line on the budget. The other things are cut costs, reduce expenditures. We're trying to do that as much as possible as well. Because of the pandemic and the year we're having, that's the only prudent thing to do.
So what is the budget for this year?
9.4 million.
And do we know what the loss or the gain is going to be yet? Or is that,
Usually runs right to the end.
I mean, are we going to be under budget, over budget? I mean, what's it looking like?
Yes, it is. What's the values look like?
Not,
We're talking 6 months into the year.
no, I know. We have an idea. Still Valley's budget, we just passed the budget for next year, so.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Not 6 months into the year to know we have another 6 months to go. It's going to be close. We know that. We knew that going into this. That's why we have a paving project of $150,000, not $350,000.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. Joe Ballas, I'm a member of the Sewer Authority Board. I was on council for 20 years, so I sat in the same seat you guys are sitting in right now, made decisions that you're going to have to make in the near future. I know there's a balance, you have to do that. Lately, I've lived by the adage, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. And I mean, this is something that, yeah, someone's going to give you $20 million, but they're going to want something back. All right? Most of these companies, they go by the ROI. Most of you guys are familiar with that, at the return on investment. So how are they going to do that? Our rates, we know that, okay? Is our board saying we're not going to raise rates? It's hard to look in the future and say that. Alphasan raises them 7 to 11% every year. That's a given, because they have a lot of work they're doing. They're building tunnels to store stuff. There's a lot of stuff going. All I'm saying, you know, I'm asking you guys, just think about this. You know, we're a non-profit. They're a for-profit. They have to show a profit. They have, I mean, if they keep giving money away and they're not making anything on it, they're not going to be in business too long. I mean, that's just the way it is. Just think about that. If something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Thanks, guys. And good luck on your deliberations.
Thank you. May I take one more? Sorry, just one more commercial for everyone. The Sewer Authority Board is a public entity. We meet on the first Wednesday of every month. We've been doing it virtually since the pandemic, and access to that is advertised in the local papers and on our website. So you can log in. We encourage anyone to attend, and we're happy to have as many people attend as possible. And when we get back into the borough building, the same thing, we'll advertise that as well. And I know that council has a thankless job too, so I want to thank them. I know that this is not an easy decision no matter how you spin it, so I do appreciate it.
And the authority is,
Thank you.
they paid that volunteer.
Thank you all for coming.